Game Plan. Vancouver Orcas, Book 1. Written by Amy Aislin. Narrated by Hokanson.
Chapter 1. As the new head coach of the Vancouver Orcas, a team that had come in dead last in the entire AHL last season, Matt Shore should have been reviewing the player roster with his fellow coaches, determining who needed extra skills training, who would benefit from an attitude adjustment, and who had an injury that needed babying before the regular season started in a few days. His job was to win. If a coach's team didn't win games, the coach got fired. It was as simple as that. Hockey was a business, just like anything else. And if Matt wanted to coach an NHL team, he'd been passed over for a coveted position just a few months ago and had gone to the Orcas instead. He needed to prove he had the chops for it, which meant he should have been poring over his roster and reworking his lines. Instead, he was sitting in one of Vancouver, British Columbia's few 24/7 cafes in the Riley Park Little Mountain neighborhood, getting dumped. And he'd known he was about to get dumped too, whether from experience or a sixth sense, or maybe because Tyler's responses to his texts had taken longer and longer to arrive in the last week. He could have preempted this and done the dumping himself over text, but he hadn't, because, first, he'd been dumped by text before, and it was as soul-crushing as it sounded, and second, he'd never been one to avoid confrontation. Eyeing Tyler's sheepish expression, Matt nursed his tea, having opted for herbal since anything caffeinated at this time of day would keep him up until the hour before his alarm went off. If this went anything like the last 2 times Matt had been dumped, Tyler would start with stuttered positivity. So, this has been a lot of fun, right? You and me? The past few weeks? Matt won. It has, Matt said. His to-go cup warmed between his hands. The second step was the lead-in to the dumping. Right. Tyler's smile was relieved, slightly goofy. He was cute in a toddler learning to walk kind of way, which wasn't at all Matt's type. But when Tyler had messaged him via the dating app Matt had installed on his phone a year ago, he'd figured, why not? And it had been fun. While the sex had been kind of meh, they'd always had a good time hanging out. The thing is, I really like you, but I jumped into the dating thing a little too quickly after my last breakup. Matt, too. The third step was the reason for the dumping, and judging by the last 2 times Matt had been dumped, that reason was, my ex and I are getting back together. Bingo. Matt 3. Being right normally felt fucking awesome, and though there was a touch of satisfaction coursing through him, mostly he felt tired. I'm really sorry, Tyler continued, reaching out to squeeze one of Matt's hands. He sounded sorry too, though he hadn't lost that goofy smile, which made sense if he'd reunited with the ex Matt had suspected he hadn't been quite over. I understand. Matt forced a smile past the exhaustion. I'm happy you two found each other again. Cupping his own cup, Tyler sighed. It might not work out this time either, but we're both willing to try. I don't usually give second chances, but maybe this time it'll be worth it. Matt had once had the same mentality until a coach had seen fit to give him a second chance. Cocky and desperate to prove himself, Matt had let expectations and nerves get the better of him at training camp the year he'd been drafted. Damn, 2 decades ago now. And his performance had been for shit. He'd been sent down to Minnesota's affiliated AHL team, where the skills coach must have seen something in him, because he'd worked with him all season, on his skills and his nerves, giving Matt a second chance to make the NHL roster the following season, where he'd stayed for the next several years. His nerves? These days, they were made of fucking steel. Expectations? Still breathing down his neck, but he'd learned to use them as fuel. Anyway, to-go cup in hand, Tyler stood. We can still be friends, right? Sure, Matt said, reading the brush-off for what it was, knowing he'd never hear from Tyler again. Take care, Tyler. And that was that. Dumped for an ex for the 3rd time in 6 months. He grabbed his cup and headed out into the early evening.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?